Hey guys, Foxdrop here with a patch breakdown video. This patch is 4.11. Before we get started, I want to say, firstly, this is, I'm just doing this from reading it from the website, and if you want to see these patch notes for yourself, then I'll put a link to them in the description. I'm not going to be reading all of the changes, obviously, I'm just going to be talking about them. And also, as you can probably tell, I've got my webcam on here with my green screen. Now, I know the green screen setup isn't perfect, it's not 100% perfect, but it's at least more interesting to look at than just the stuff on the screen. So I wanted to make these a bit more interesting because I do have some other videos in the works, namely to do with people that are going to be featured in these patch notes. So jumping right into it, I want to focus mostly on the jungle stuff, obviously. So the first thing I want to talk about is with Kayle here. Now I'm skipping over these things because, like I said, they're not too related to the jungle and they're pretty straightforward. But first and foremost, with Kayle, Kayle is, in my opinion, the most broken champion in the game. Now, broken doesn't necessarily mean overpowered. By broken, I just mean that her kit is so ridiculous, like it's horrendous and it's ugly. Like, she has so much stuff, and it's really not fun to play versus a Kayle. She has too many things in her kit, in my opinion. That's a bit of my rant out of the way. So for these patch notes, basically they've nerfed her. But in my opinion, it's like, just because something gets nerfed doesn't mean it's bad. I don't think Kayle's been nerfed into oblivion. I think that she's now been brought down to a level where she's more on par with other champions. But I still honestly think that Kayle is really strong, and a champion that's still worth a ban every single game. I just hate Kayle. Like, I don't know if you can tell, but I really dislike Kayle. They nerfed her AP ratio, which isn't a big deal if you're not running a high AP build. So if you're going for like an on-hit build, or if you're going for that Korean build where you get like a Runens and then a Nash's Tooth, your AP isn't really that much of a deal breaker for your item build. So this AP nerf, this AP ratio nerf, isn't a huge deal. Bottom line with Kayle, she got nerfed, but I still think she's very strong. And yeah, you can play Kayle as a jungler, obviously. Like, I've done that on my channel. There are some Kayle jungle videos. The build, if you're interested, I would go like Berserker Greaves, Spirit the Spectral Wraith, and Nash's Tooth as your core items. Now, the big one I want to talk about here is Maokai. He's the biggest change for this patch as far as jungling goes, because he has been out of commission for probably since Season 2. He's really not been too popular, and the reasons for this is because the jungle has changed so that it's not so much about AoE clearing anymore. In addition to that, junglers now get more gold, so the junglers who rely on having more items are now more popular, and because of that, indirectly, the champions which don't need a lot of items, who can basically be support tanks, i.e. Maokai, aren't as popular anymore. And as kind of like a semi-point going off the last one, because these champions who are good, who want items, who are good with items, I should say, are now more popular, those are the types of champions which really prey on Maokai in the jungle. Like, they're his worst matchups. So when you've got all these people, when you've got like loads of scissors flying around, what's the point of picking a paper? That's kind of the thing with Maokai. But these changes bring him more into line. Most of these changes, well, this Q change is just a bit of, less mana but less effect on the slow. The reason why they've done that is because they've added the slow to his E. Basically, now that your sapling does less damage on both the land and the explosion, but on the explosion it slows the enemy down, which is pretty cool. And your saplings now run pretty fast if Maokai yourself runs fast. So if you've got like Moby Boots or something, then your saplings they bomb it to the target, they explode, and it's actually a pretty reliable pretty reliable CC, as long as your sapling doesn't get blocked by minions or something. That's basically the gist with his E, and his W now does percentage health damage, and it's maximum health as well. It's not current health, which is a really big deal, which means that he's always doing a fair amount of damage, to be honest. Maokai now does pretty big damage with his W, which is really quite nice, and also means that he's better at taking away the big jungle monsters, because they have huge amounts of health as well. So you can use your W on the big jungle monsters, whether that's the buff or just like the big creature in the camps, like the big wraith, the Y, the big wolf, or whatever it is. His clears are now a lot better as well, because that was what Maokai struggled with. He was good at AoE clearing, but not so good at single target clearing, so that helps him there as well. And finally, with his ultimate, it now follows him around, so he'll use his ult, and it's like a area around him that follows him wherever he moves, which reduces damage taken by the people inside it. That's basically what that change is. And so my overall thoughts about Maokai right now, I've tested him, I played around with him, and I've seen a lot of him in solo queue as well, and he seems pretty strong, to be honest. Like, he's you know, he's not just an immovable object anymore. He's actually got a bit of offensive upside to him as well, which is quite surprising and quite threatening. So if you can get through the early stages of the game, as in not get preyed upon in your own jungle, then he's very good at ganking, and he's very tanky and also gets some damage later on. And so the fact this ulti follows you around is quite nice as well. It means that if you mark up and put it in the wrong place, you're not going to get really punished for it, which is pretty cool. Now this Nautilus change isn't so big. Basically, it's now that there is a clarity indicator on when you can use your staggering blow on the same target, and also now you can use it more. Your passive, this is used more frequently on the same target as you're leveling up. Now Nautilus is still, I still don't think he's perfect. In my opinion, the major change that they need to make to Nautilus is his W is pretty much his biggest damage ability, but it only persists, the damage part of his W only persists while his shield is up. So you lose your shield, you lose your damage, and that's not good. That means that if someone pops your shield, which is not really that hard, then your damage goes down from like not so bad to horrifically, horrendously awful. Like it's really, really bad. Like Nautilus has probably the lowest damage out of any champion in the game when his W shield has been popped, and it has like a 25-second cooldown. It's got a really high cooldown, so it's not something you can spam either. What they need to do for Nautilus, in my personal opinion, is they need to make it so that when his shield pops, the damage still persists for like, you know, 5 seconds or something. But this is brought him more in line, and also like they say here, we're making the Ancient Golem changes, which I'm going to mention later. They help him as well. For some reason this is actually, they kind of like buff Nidalee. I don't know why they did this. I don't think Nidalee needed a buff. I think they should have waited for a while, because she's already seemed pretty strong, and you know, it's when you've made a huge change to someone, it seems weird unless it's like really overpowered or something to that change in the next patch as well. But you know, I don't really agree with that, but you know, whatever. Skarner is another one to talk about. Now Skarner was actually changed a little while back, and he's now been nerfed, but I still think he's quite strong. Skarner is someone who is very good at dueling and is fairly good at clearing as well, and scales very nicely with items. So the more gold you have, the more scary you are when you're on Skarner. Now that kind of sounds a bit stupid, because obviously the more items you have, the scarier you are on anyone. But I just mean in comparison to a lot of other champions. Skarner, and as I rate Skarner and Hecarim very similarly as far as their builds go and how powerful they can be when they have a lot of items. I think Hecarim's probably a bit stronger, but still. Skarner is very good, very tanky, and with all these changes that have happened, I think Skarner is really strong. I think he's definitely viable in solo queue, and he has some favourable matchups as well. But again, the biggest thing I would say about Skarner, like a negative to him, is that the items that you kind of want to be buying on him are not... Basically, his item builds don't really have a lot of health in them, at least not early on. So the items which you're really convinced to buy that look really good on him, that are really good on him, don't give you any health until maybe your third or even your fourth item, which can be a bit ugly early on in the game when you don't have a lot of health. Also, Zac, I want to mention here, his W, picking up chunklet. I love that word. A chunklet is a great word. Picking up your chunklet reduces the cooldown of your unstable matter by 1 second. So whenever you pick up one of your blobs, your W's cooldown is reduced by 1 second. And whenever you hit a jungle monster with your W, you can walk through that monster to pick up your blob. So you're not minion blocked anymore when you're clearing through the jungle, which is amazing. This is a really smart quality of life change, in my opinion. Like, it's, you know, like, this is something which is quite subtle, but it makes quite a big difference. Even if it's just like the clunkiness of him gets removed a little bit, I like that change. And again, with the changes to Spirit of the Ancient Golem, yeah, that is what it's called. Zac is even more, you know, that benefits Zac even more. And like I said, I'll be mentioning that later on. And I think Zac is pretty strong right now, in my opinion. I wouldn't say he's top tier, but I would definitely say he's viable again. So I'm just going to skip past these things because they're not important for what I want to talk about now. And this is the last thing I really want to say here, is with the split of the Ancient Golem, the changes which have happened, and the new Cruel Clone. Obviously, they changed the Huntsman Machete as well. So I'll start with the Huntsman Machete, and basically they've got rid of these, the Maimeless and Butcher... Oh, yeah, the Maim and Butcher passive they got rid of, and they've just worded it, they've changed it slightly, but... You now get damage reduction versus monsters, and you get plus 10 attack damage versus monsters, which is... This is better. Having 10 attack damage is better than doing 10 extra damage, because it means that your abilities will do more damage versus them, but it's a pretty minor thing. And this damage reduction just is a change from the kind of like the semi-lifesteal effect that Butcher used to have with it. But now it costs 25 more gold, which means that you can only get 4 potions instead of 5 at level 1, which actually is a fairly big deal for the early aggressive junglers yeah, those junglers who are aggressive early. It's a fairly big deal because if you run out of your potions, you have to go back, and they have one less potion to work with now. So if they want to stay out in the jungle and be, you know, try to apply a lot of pressure early on in the game, and they want to be fighting a lot and so therefore losing some health, you only have 4 potions now to do that, which means it actually kind of limits that ever so slightly. It's not a massive change, you know, it's not dropping Lee Sin from the best jungler in the game to like useless, it's nothing like that, but you will feel it, you will notice it. Quill Cloak here, or Quill Coat, sorry I should say. So the gist of what Quill Coat does is that it gives you armor, it gives you health as well, right? No, it doesn't give you health, that's on the Ancient Golem. It gives you armor, and what it does is it gives you a thorn, like aura. So whenever you're hit by a jungle monster, that jungle monster will take damage based off its percentage health. So it just helps you clear a bit faster like that. And in addition to that, whenever you are in combat in the jungle, you will get some regeneration bonuses, and that regen is actually pretty huge. Like I was going from maybe 3 health per second and like 2 mana per second to like 13 and 12. You know, it really does increase your regen pretty huge, which is really nice because that's what your other spirit items do. They give you regen by doing damage to the camps. This gives you regen just by being in combat, which is nice because what this item is aimed at, which is the tank junglers, they don't deal a lot of damage. So getting regen based off of how much damage they deal doesn't really make much sense. And getting regen based off how long they're in combat for makes more sense, you know, because like I say, it's not based on damage, and also if they are slower at clearing, they will regen more too. So it makes them harder to prey upon in the jungle, because if they are slow at clearing, they're not really going to get as low on health, because obviously they have this regen passive. Now the Thorns is really, in my opinion, it's a bit underwhelming. I don't really think it's that strong. I think the Thorns are kind of weak, especially to the mini creatures in the camp, because it does a percentage of, the Thorns do damage of their max health over a certain period of time, 3 seconds, and the smaller creatures don't have a lot of health, so this Thorns doesn't really do any damage to them. But the big ones, it does a fair amount. Like it might increase, it's like an extra auto attack, you know, every 1 or 2 seconds. It's a fairly decent amount. It's okay. And to be honest, the people which this is aimed at, which is the tank junglers, people like Maokai, Nautilus, Zac, you know, those champions are usually pretty good at AoE clearing. They're just weak at single target clearing. So which is what the Quill Coat is good at. It's the big moon. So it doesn't really matter that it's not very good for the minis. And the last thing as well is it gives you a ward too. And this ward is really, really nice because, again, another big weakness, like I was saying with Maokai, he's a paper, and all the popular junglers are scissors, i.e. they counter him. They're not good matchups for him, and like they're very vulnerable early to invades. So this ward that you can get now very early on into the game is going to help protect you versus that aggressive play from the enemy jungler. So you have your trinket ward, and you have this ward, and you have the wards which you're going to be buying yourself. So with all those added up, you should be pretty safe in your own jungle now, which is great. I mean, like I say again, this is a pretty smart, like a small quality of life thing, giving this a ward, which is quite subtle and quite a neat change. And then this Quill Coat builds into a Spirit of the Ancient Golem. Spirit of the Ancient Golem no longer builds out Spirit Stone, which doesn't really make sense because it's like a spirit of the item. It doesn't build out Spirit Stone. Oh, whatever. We can live with that. And now it gives you health, but less health than before. It gives you the same cooldown reduction, but it doesn't give you tenacity anymore. And it gives you, I think it increases your health by 25%. And it also gives you the armor that you'll get from your Quill Coat. So health and armor is a really, really nice early game stat, I think, for these tank junglers, because, you know, like I say, all of these people which are going to be bullying you usually are the bruisers or who do physical damage, so that helps you quite nicely. And this bonus health means that the champions who are tanky, who scale well with health, which is going to be pretty much all of these tank junglers, these utility tank junglers, scale in some way with health, right? Maokai's passive heals him for a percentage of his max health. Mundo has like a million, like his passive, his ulti, and the fact that his abilities do flat amount of health, all means that the more health he has, the better he is. Nautilus's W scales with bonus health. Zac's abilities they cost a percentage of his current health, and they heal him for a percentage of his max health, which means that the more health you have, then the more you're healing overall. So all of these champions scale really, really well with health. So the increased bonus health means that the more health you're buying, the more health you're getting, and you will be buying a lot of health on these tank junglers who, or all these junglers who are going to be buying Ancient Golem will be buying a lot of health as well. So this is like a guaranteed synergy, which is really, really nice, and it has the same passive that this Quill Coat has with the thorns and the regen. The regen is increased once you buy this Ancient Golem, and it has the ward as well. Don't forget to use your ward in Ancient Golem. Like, this is a mistake I've been making because I'm not used to having a ward in Ancient Golem. So don't forget that you've got that ward and you can use it. Now everything else I don't really want to talk about because I don't think it's too important. It's just like bug fixes and stuff. Yeah, so that's pretty much all the changes, guys. That does it for the jungle changes. This video's gone on a little bit. I'm sorry about that, but I hope you can. I hope this gave answer some questions about all these changes. Like I said, I'm going to be doing some videos on specifically Maokai and Skarner are the two I want to cover coming up. And I'll just be doing maybe even some of like these Nautilus or these these people which haven't really been seen and are now gonna be a bit stronger, or just these Ancient Golem kind of junglers. But that's all I want to say, guys. Thanks a lot for watching this video. I hope you found it useful. I'm doing a lot more streaming recently, so if you want to see me play some games live, interact with me, talk to me, come say hi to me, or just learn a bit of the game. Once you've seen, if you don't want to watch some of the videos, or you've watched all of them, or whatever it is, go check out my stream, which is twitch.tv/Foxdrop. Link to that will be in the description. But thanks very much for watching this video, guys. Hope you're having a great day, and I will see you in my next video.